To kick things off, Captain America Brave New World is among the weaker MCU films, as we expected. It isn't a good film. It had a lot of problems during production. Clearly, those problems stemmed from a weak script. But the funk the MCU finds itself in is clearly because the franchise has run its course since Endgame, and almost every type of superhero story you can think of has been told at this point. Declining returns after 15 or 16 years is inevitable for any franchise. However, I don't think this film is the worst MCU film at all, and it's certainly not the Marvels. If this film had been made on a budget of, say, $150 million, which it probably should have been, I could comfortably see it breaking even. But it wasn't. Its budget became overinflated due to extensive rewrites, reshoots, and additional post-production work. And so what will potentially worsen the legacy of this film would be a box office failure, but we shall see how well it does at the box office. We might be surprised. The Marvels did not have a likable protagonist. I think Brave New World does. And that's probably the best thing about this film. It's probably the thing the film has going for it, actually. As much as I don't think Sam Wilson should be Captain America, he should have remained Falcon, he is a likable and honourable man, and you can't help but root for the guy, even if the story is bland and formulaic. When I sat down to watch this, I really wanted to give it a chance. Perhaps after all of its production issues, maybe the filmmakers managed to whip the film into shape and salvage something. I guess in a way they did, but it's not enough, not even close. The story revolves around newly elected President Thaddeus Ross, now played by Harrison Ford, reaching out to Captain America, Sam Wilson, with the hopes of reforming the Avengers. Ross is a controversial figure. He and Wilson have a history. Ross did, after all, divide the Avengers with the Sokovia Accords, so his request is an odd one. The film does deal with Wilson's lack of super soldier serum, incidentally, a plot point the writers probably felt was needed, given how Wilson seems to be able to fight just as well as Steve Rogers. He even kicks around the vibranium shield just as Steve did, despite not being nearly as strong as Steve. I'm glad they addressed this, but it still doesn't work. I mean, especially when you see Wilson picking up a cement block with one hand and smashing it into a bad guy. A friend of his, Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumbly, is a super soldier himself, and I think he was in the movie in order to contrast Wilson's strength against a super soldier, so that you could clearly see there was a difference, despite the fact that when Sam Wilson is fighting in the movie, you can see that he's clearly fighting with what looks like the same strength as a super soldier. But anyway, Isaiah Bradley is mind-controlled, along with a number of other Secret Service agents, by an unknown villain into attempting an assassination attempt on the president. The nuts and bolts of the story is that someone is trying to contrive a war between America and Japan, specifically surrounding the discovery of adamantium, yes, from the X-Men movies, adamantium which is found in the Celestial Island, which is a reference to the Eternals movie. Yeah, but if you're going to do a follow-up to a plot point, you might want to build on a stronger movie in the franchise than Eternals. But anyway, the issue with the first half of this film is that it's trying to be kind of a Winter Soldier-esque conspiracy movie, complete with Wilson striking out on his own against orders and undertaking his own unofficial investigation, much like Steve did in Winter Soldier. But Wilson's investigation is wrapped up in just a few scenes, right? We discover who's pulling the strings much too quickly. There's no tension or suspense built up. In fact, Isaiah Bradley is put in prison, and yet Wilson discovers very quickly how the mind control trick was done. He has the evidence, basically. It was done via a phone. And for some reason, he doesn't go straight to Ross's administration with his evidence. It's all there. It's one of those films where the audience is ahead of the characters in terms of unraveling the mystery of the plot, which is always a frustration. The main bad guy is found by the midpoint of the film. Samuel Stearns, played by Tim Blake Nelson. Basically an experiment of Ross's from around the time of the first Hulk movie. super serum turned him into a big brain think tank, and Ross used him over the years to get him power and position. Now he wants revenge on Ross. Yeah, revenge. A totally not overdone motivation for a bad guy or anything. Ross went to Stearns with a heart condition that he developed, and Stearns was able to come up with a solution. He gave him these pills he developed in a laboratory, but it turns out these pills are slowly turning Ross into Red Hulk. And he appears only at the end of the movie, right? There's a brief fight between Red Hulk and Wilson. Ross's story arc concerns his legacy and relationship with his estranged daughter Betty, played in a brief cameo by Liv Tyler, who returns to the role for the first time since the Incredible Hulk movie. There's a bunch of other elements going on as well. A henchman character, Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who serves more in an expositionary role than anything else. There's another Black Widow, Ruth Bat-Seraph, but it's like they kind of went out of their way to cast the smallest actress imaginable for an action hero character with Shira Haas. And then there's the new Falcon, played by Danny Ramirez, and he's the plucky, overconfident newcomer understudy to Sam Wilson. And also there's a cameo by Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. The background political fallout between various countries, which Ross tries to manage, also doesn't really land very well, in my opinion. It doesn't really have the impact it needs. So the first half of the film tries to be a conspiracy thriller with other political elements, and that story gets resolved too quickly, and the rest of the movie is a series of okay action scenes with too much CGI. CGI that, as you can see from the trailers, it just isn't up to the standard of earlier MCU movies. And this is something that I think Disney Marvel really needs to address soon. For some reason, for whatever reason it is, and it's been going on for several years now, we've talked about this, the CG in these MCU movies is not what it was, which is very disappointing and always takes me out of the movie. So in the final climax, Stearns basically brings out Red Hulk in Ross, and Red Hulk gets defeated too quickly. Stearns just basically turns himself in, right? And then Wilson manages to convince Ross to finally sort of take control of Red Hulk, and the film ends. It ends on a rather low-key note. And then there's a post-credit scene where Stearns tells Wilson in prison what we already know, that there's a multiverse and there's other worlds, and these worlds are going to attack this one, as if that's some kind of exciting final moment to leave the film on. When it just comes across as, so what? And the franchise has already shown us the multiverse in Loki, a little bit in the Marvels, in Deadpool and Wolverine, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man No Way Home. At this point, who cares? And more to the point, the multiverse isn't even a popular plot device among fans. Audiences are just sick of the multiverse. It's been so overused. It's not new information. So I don't know why they thought that this was an exciting point to use as a post-credit scene. It doesn't make for a very interesting cliffhanger. Look, I've seen much worse movies than Captain America: Brave New World. This is a poor movie, but I don't think it's terrible. I do think that they salvaged the movie sufficiently in the end, making it watchable enough. But it's not must-see. I think it's a hair better than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, just a hair. But a Captain America movie should be much more than just watchable, right? As to where things go from here for the MCU, it's clear Disney Marvel are just, I think at this stage, they're just kind of banking on getting as many of the original MCU cast members back on screen for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, in the hopes that will be enough to rekindle fan interest. In my opinion, I'm not seeing serious creative storytelling in these movies anymore. It's all very assembly line. It's tired. If the money is to be spent anywhere, it should be spent less on actors and reshoots and visual effects, but more on writers and directors. We need some visionaries. There's new creative blood needed in order to right the ship, in my opinion. Guys, let me know your thoughts on Captain America Brave New World, if you've seen it, of course. I know a lot of you probably have been waiting for this review. Apologies, it's a few days late. It couldn't be helped. I had a few things on. Take care, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.